This is the primal scream of a dying regime.
Pray for our enemies, because we're going medieval on these people. You're just not got a free shot on all these networks lying about the people. The people have had a belly full of it. I know you don't like hearing that. I know you try to do everything in the world to stop that, but you're not going to stop it. It's going to happen.
And where do people like that go to share the big lie? MAGA media. I wish in my soul, I wish that any of these people had a conscience.
Ask yourself, what is my task and what is my purpose? If that answer is to save my country, this country will be saved.
War Room. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Monday, 27 July, year of our Lord 2026. Jack Posobiec's with us. We're going to go to Oxford in a moment with Eric Metaxas. We're going to cover the globe this morning. I want to thank our sponsors, particularly Patriot Mobile down there in Texas, Glenn and Jenny Story, two of the great patriots, a Christian-based company that supports your Christian values called 972 Patriot. You get a customer service person. They're going to walk you through why it's the best phone service in the world and why you should switch and how you can switch, how you save money. But if you want to break out in a prayer session, go for it. You're going to get somebody with an East Texas accent. That's all in. So 972 Patriot, do it today. Talk to these folks about why it's the best phone service in the world. And man, they've got your back. The efforts they have done down there, I think it's $3 million to support, whether it's first responders, Second Amendment, all of it, groups that you want supported. So check it out today. Patriot Mobile, 972 Patriot. Also, Tax Network USA. Scott Besson's wrestling with, he kind of oversees the IRS. We had the director of the IRS on the other day. He's up front. They got to collect every penny they think they're owed. There's the rub. Go to Tax Network USA. Get a special hotline for you, 866-513-5516. If you think there's a difference of opinion, right, let the Tax Network USA people work you through and come up with the facts. And so you can see what the bid and the ask is between you and the IRS. 866-513-5516. Totally free. Doesn't cost you anything. No obligation. It's called a discovery call. Do it today. And I mean today. Don't delay. Your anxiety will decrease. Jack Posobiec, as we've warned for a long time, if you want to have a really, we talk about the early days of the kinetic part of the Third World War. If you want to accelerate, if you're an accelerationist and want to accelerate the kinetic part of the Third World War, what you do is merge the two fronts. That would be the front in Ukraine, in the front with Israel in this situation with the Persians, and now with the Houthis that stretches from Lebanon and Syria all the way through across the Arc to the Red Sea and the Houthis in the Suez Canal. Jack Posobiec, how dangerous a territory is this, and why is Zelensky driving towards this, sir?
Look, Steve, we got to remember, of course, that this is the clash of civilizations. This is the area at the center of the world island, as Mackinder would have it, where all civilizations are constantly vying for purchase, for one-upsmanship, to see who is able to attain prominence and influence in the world. So this is always where civilizations clash, whether it be the Persians, the Russians, the Byzantines, of course, Alexander the Great. You know, people are talking about the Greek epics yet again, even though I personally didn't care for Christopher Nolan's movie. That people have to understand this goes back thousands of years. And this is a hornet's nest, and it's always been the Bloodlands, which is really just this crescent, just this bloody crescent of instability that runs from, of course, eastern Ukraine and those borderlands all the way down into the Middle East. And what happened this last Saturday isn't getting a lot of attention, but I think that it really should. And this is when Zelensky sent a couple of, we don't know if exactly it was drones or this strike that took place on an Iranian cargo ship that was headed up from the Caspian Sea, not the Black Sea, across the Black Sea into the Caspian Sea, across the Caucasus, struck an Iranian supply ship that was sending a supply, it looks like, of drones to Russia. Now, we know that Iran has been sending those supplies for quite some time, but this is the first time that Zelensky has targeted them directly, and to do so in the Caspian Sea, which is that sea that connects the Caucasus with Russia and Iran. Of course, this is a key development, which not only could open up a new front in both of those wars, but it is a front where, in fact, the wars would merge. Now, we see this done for the political reasoning, because we can also see on the political side, Zelensky and Netanyahu are now both traveling to Washington. The Iranian foreign minister, Araghchi, also pointed out, he claimed that Zelensky is doing this at the behest of Israel, because they want to merge Europe and the Middle East into one large war. And Steve, when it comes down to it, this is one of the most dangerous things that you could find, because Dan Kane and all the other senior generals out there, everyone who's looked at this says the biggest risk of the Iran conflict is drawing in Iran. Iran's a junior partner in many respects in terms of their economic access. But if you draw in Russia, if you draw in China to a conflict like that, that has the degree of escalation and spillover into a wider conflict that, as you say, Steve, wouldn't just be a two-front war for the United States. It has the potential to escalate into something far bigger than I think anyone can even imagine right now.
We've got all this today about artificial intelligence and the Chinese Communist Party, and it's out there that chips are being sold through third parties, particularly like I think Thailand is where the chips came from, and what they're doing. Scott Bessent's out saying, "Hey, we're going to shut down through tariffs and other means the Chinese stealing IP, which is even leading to their OpenAI." We got Xi scheduled for the books for late September. I'm going to get to the Russians back in a second, but the big partner here is China. This is why we got blockade, all the oil coming out. No oil should go out. They shouldn't be able to get any oil, and they should monetize it. But correct me if I'm wrong, Poso, don't they have an overland route that's our great ally in Pakistan? The overland route, how they're getting rearmed today with component pieces, is the overland route through Pakistan, which Pakistan happens to be the number one recipient and the number one partner of One Belt, One Road. The Chinese Communist Party is definitely their ally, and they're supplying component parts to the Persians in the overland route that I don't think as of yet we're bombing. Is that correct, Poso?
Well, Steve, that route's been there for quite some time. And of course, that component of the Belt and Road Initiative that you're discussing is the key region why it is that China has been so focused for years, of course, on Xinjiang and the Uyghurs. And we've talked about that and their treatment at length. But people need to realize that there is a geographic and geopolitical reason for this, because it is exactly at that point in just across the Hindu Kush, right, just across the border from Pakistan into China, where Xinjiang lies. The city of Kashgar is right there, where they filmed the Kite Runner movie. They filmed that over there and a bunch of other stuff. And so people have to realize that this is all about the overland route that connects the world island. This is why China cares about the Uyghurs. They're not interested in, they don't care about a Turkic people that are set up there for no reason. They're trying to reconstitute the Silk Road, and they're doing so. And by the way, there's Chinese cars all over Europe, so they're doing so via maritime, and they're doing so via overland with all the principalities and countries from Asia Minor all the way through Central Asia and the Middle East to once again be principalities of China, the way they were in ancient times.
The Mackinder theory, Alexander the Great, Caesar, Napoleon, Hitler, others, about the control of the world island by, who controls the center of the world island, controls the world island, who controls the world island, controls the world. That would be the Eurasian landmass, and throw in Africa. Homeland defense says, hey, guess what? If we defend the entire island of the Western Hemisphere from the Arctic to the tip, and we use our natural strategic pivot, which is not the heartland of things, we shouldn't be around the rim of it trying to fight a losing game, but the Central Pacific all the way through the three island chain, because we are a Pacific nation, that is our defense, and that's what we have to focus on. Poso, you got a buried lead there, and I want to ask you, because people are saying, hey.
Before you change.
Go ahead.
before you change on that, Steve, what if the American Mackinder strategy of the war room could be defending the Western island?
Exactly. That's where the 3 island chain of the Western Islands right there make your Pacific nation. Jack, before you got a buried lead in there, I just want to make sure we're clear about this. Zelensky and people are saying, hey, Russia's arming the Iranians. You mentioned right there that on the ship itself, there might have been actual drones from Iran, from Persia, going to Russia so they can continue to combat the Ukrainians. That would mean they got surplus of what they're even hitting us with in the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz. Your thoughts?
Well, Steve, look, this has been a key economic and military relationship for the Persians. It's been one that's been continuing as these supplies do continue. We've seen the Iranians be able to conduct their strikes. We know that there was, of course, that reporting about the president being warned off of the new Air Force One due to the threat of an Iranian strike or some kind of Iranian interception. And case in point is that, look, the way the distributed mosaic network of Iran's defenses is set up, they do the same thing with their military, with their defense infrastructure, with their manufacturing, with their military industrial base. They do this with their power grid, is that they have small facilities all over the country in a distributed model. So us taking out one plant here, one plant there, whether it's whether it's a manufacturing plant, whether it's a power plant, that doesn't mean that reduces their entire capacity. And Steve, they set themselves up. They set up their entire system this way for 50 years because they've been waiting for this war. And I'm not saying that they're winning, and far from it, by the way. I believe that Donald Trump, our president, has controlled the escalatory ladder. I am just saying that this is perhaps more complicated than folks in the Beltway would have you believe.
No, and that's why these meetings are so important tomorrow. Jack, where do people, you're going to be back up at 2 o'clock. You're back from your overseas trip, back up at 2 o'clock on Human Events Daily, right here on Real America's Voice, following Andrew Colvette in the Charlie Kirk Show. We'll have the technical situation worked out so we can see the whole show. And then tomorrow night, 5 to 7, we're going to do a special regarding Sam Faddis, his life, his accomplishments, also to the great insights he gave us in every part of the world, but particularly the Middle East. And we're going to tie that directly to the news of the day. The news of the day, I think, might have something to do, Jack, tomorrow with Zelensky and Netanyahu in the imperial capital at the same time.
That's exactly right, Steve. And that's and it's also kind of interesting that you're seeing the war roomization of the UK. So I'm back from London. Raheem's over in London. You got Metaxas now over in Oxford. I don't know what's going on, but it might be a little bit of reverse 1776. You know what I'm talking about?
Exactly. Raheem's actually there doing serious work, as is Metaxas. But I mean, Raheem's really over there working with Nigel. Last thing, there's a documentarian that made raw footage about Lindsey Graham for a couple of months, and they got Lindsey on the night of the bombing, and he tells about what he told Trump. He told Trump this will take just like a week. And then all of a sudden they're going to rise up and overthrow it. So you can see what the intelligence service were feeding right to Lindsey Graham. Your closing thoughts before we bounce, sir.
Look, I'm just going to, I'm not going to, speak ill of the late senator, but I am going to say that footage, Steve, watching it made me sick to my stomach. The giddiness in the voice, the levity, clapping and cheering, knowing that, that Americans were going into harm's way. I mean, this is serious business. And it just doesn't seem like he was taking it seriously at all. And it made me sick to my stomach to watch something like that. But that's a person who's sending 5,000 sailors at a clip on these aircraft carriers in harm's way.
In harm's way. We're going to play those clips probably this evening. Jack, you're the Associated Press of the MAGA movement on Twitter and Getter. Where do people go?
All right, we're up at Jack Posobiec on Truth Social, on Telegram, and of course, Instagram and Getter as well. Make sure you are there because you never know when the censor hammer swings back down.
Thank you, sir. See you later. 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. tomorrow night. Natalie Winters and Jack Posobiec will be co-hosting me. We'll have many other people on in memoriam to the great Sam Faddis. Short commercial break. We're going to Oxford next with Eric Metaxas.
Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, we're going to Oxford. Metaxas, you're doing your Socrates in the City. You did your last one in Lexington and Concord. Are today you carrying the flag of revolution to the heart of the England's intelligentsia at Oxford and Cambridge, sir?
Not exactly, but I'd like to think that when the Holy Spirit arrives, God is on the move, liberty is here. I'll tell you, it is fascinating, Steve. We're doing, I've been doing Socrates in the City for 25 years. We do these retreats in different places. So here we're in Oxford, England. Why? Because I love C.S. Lewis, J.R.R. Tolkien. That's a big reason we're here. But it's a fascinating thing, the cultural difference. One of the themes of my book, Revolution, is the cultural divide between the British elites of Georgian-era England and the American elites. The American elites were profoundly Christian. Today, we would think of them as evangelical, Bible-based Christians. They believed in virtue and principle and honor. The British elites, there's tremendous decadence. And it's a funny thing because, I mentioned we're doing the Socrates in the City thing. Victoria Jackson of Saturday Night Live, she's going to be with us here. And it's just a great group of people. But 2 days ago, I was in Nashville with Victoria and her husband. We were having a conversation, and she said, I love the part in your book. I'm not going to do her high-pitched voice. I love the part of your book where you write about the engagement party that General Burgoyne had or whatever. And I realized I'd forgotten about this. I go out of my way in the book, Revolution, to talk about the extraordinary decadence of the British elites. It's just a level of decadence that we kind of forget that our guys, okay, the Minutemen, Paul Revere, many of them working class, they were fighting elite folks like, Gentleman Johnny Burgoyne, they weren't just elites, they were effete. There was something in that culture. And it's funny because it's the same culture today. I keep saying that the story of the revolution, it's like Hollywood and Manhattan elites with their values, with their decadent values, sneering at faith, fighting with people from a small town in Oklahoma. They speak the same language, but the cultural divide is absolutely extraordinary. And so in the book, there's a few examples you've read about.
Yeah, tell us about Gentleman Johnny Burgoyne, because he was one of those important field officers, and his surrender at Saratoga was a game changer. Tell me about General Johnny Burgoyne, who was the top of the top, right?
Yeah, well, one of the reasons I loved writing this book, is that there are characters like Gentleman Johnny Burgoyne. I remember in 5th grade hearing about Gentleman Johnny Burgoyne, and you realize that this guy was a fop, he was a dandy, and he was somebody that he really had. He was at the center of British elite culture. And I go out of my way to tell the story before he comes over to America. He basically throws a party for his, I think it's a nephew, and it's an engagement party. And it is the most extravagant, decadent party. It's in the book. You read the book, so you read. But you almost can't believe the level of decadence for this party. No expense is spared. It's something that most people would say, this is a little much. You're spending a lot of money. Are you sure?
The reason you need to get this book and you need to get copies for the younger people is that you just said something about, you heard about Johnny Burgoyne in the 5th grade. Well, trust me, in American schools today, they ain't here, unless you're homeschooled, you ain't hearing about Johnny Burgoyne in the Saratoga campaign in the 5th grade. This is why you got to get the book, right?
Well, listen, Burgoyne is one of those characters. I fall in love with some of these characters, even the bad guys. Like, you just think, I got to write about this guy because he is so entertaining. He's a playwright. He's hanging out with David Garrick and he's writing plays. And then he decides, he wants to be in the military. And when he comes to America, basically he's sent over with General Howe and General Clinton. And this is in 1775. So, he arrives right after Lexington and Concord and right before the Battle of Bunker Hill. And he has this crazy idea that he's going to bring reconciliation between the colonies. And then when he sees the bloodbath of Bunker Hill, he kind of changes his tune. But to me, it's comedy. When you get to the Battle of Saratoga, he's so pompous that he's writing these letters, trying to get the Americans, trying to terrorize them, basically say, like, if you do not, surrender to me, to Gentleman Johnny Burgoyne, we will crush you. We will unleash the savages on you, because they knew that the Native Americans that the British very, very cynically allied with were sadistic. They would scalp living people. They would torture. They would do all this stuff. So he is just one of the characters in the book that you think, are you making this up? Is this for a novel? No, this is real. These characters were real. And again, the level of decadence with Burgoyne in 1777, he oversees the turning point of the war when we crush the British at the Battle of Saratoga. It's just a moment that changes everything. At that point, Burgoyne realizes, okay, I guess I'm not going to be the hero that I thought I was. But it's just, there's so many characters like that. You know, they're drinking.
This is when France start taking it seriously. The book Revolution. Real quickly, the Eagle and Child Pub, the Inklings. C.S. Lewis and Tolkien. Talk to us about it. Give the audience, so I know, will be fascinated by all this about the Inklings.
Listen, I'll tell you, and I can come back on. I'll be here all week, but I'll tell you, I love it here. My wife and I, we love England. We were here on our honeymoon 30 years ago, okay? And every time there's a C.S. Lewis conference, we come to Oxford and Cambridge, right down the street. I mean, I could sprint there in 20 seconds. The Eagle and Child. This is the place where Tolkien and C.S. Lewis would meet. They would read to each other their works in progress. The Hobbit, the Chronicles of Narnia. They would read this to each other. They call it the Rabbit Room. It's a back room that they would gather and they drink their ale, and they're reading this stuff. You can't even imagine. And those are just two of the most famous Inklings, but there was just a number of literary figures. So I love C.S. Lewis. He's absolutely my favorite writer. And that's a big part of why I started Socrates in the City, to acquaint people with this kind of stuff that has a deeply Christian view. And I gotta say, since I'm in England, Americans always loved Lewis and Tolkien more than the British loved Lewis and Tolkien, because Americans tend to be more overtly Christian. Over here, it's kind of, you can feel it, obviously, when you're in England. It's spiritually a little bit darker, a little bit more pagan. But there's tons of Americans in Oxford. I get recognized on the street. There's so many evangelical conservative Christians in Oxford in the summer having events. So it's absolutely amazing. It is amazing, and I do love it here. We come here every year.
C.S. Lewis and Tolkien get the headlines, but my favorite was Charles Williams. If you ever get a chance, 2 books: War in Heaven and Descent into Hell. Not a lot of people know about that stuff. God bless you for knowing about that. And one thing I got to say is that near here, Magdalen College was where Tolkien talked C.S. Lewis into accepting Jesus, because Lewis had become he believes in God, but I don't know about the Jesus thing. Tolkien says to him, the story of Jesus, it's the one true myth. You love myth. Myth has power. What if there was a myth of the dying God who's resurrected that once in history actually happened? And they were taking a late night walk on Addison's Walk. I've been there many times. We're going to go there in a couple of days. And Tolkien talks Lewis into thinking about this, and that leads to the conversion of C.S. Lewis, thanks to J.R.R. Tolkien. It's an amazing moment in the 20th century. 2 of the giants, I think the greatest authors of the 20th century, talking about this kind of stuff. It all happened here. You can tell I'm excited. And you remember John McCain in the floor of the Senate accused MAGA of being the hobbits. Well, the hobbits from the Shire were the backbone of society, as Tolkien knew from his youth of the Shire.
Nobody knew it better than Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, and that's why they wrote what they did. They wanted, and this gets to the heart of it. They were not decadent. They were not cynical. They believed in heroism. They believed in sacrifice. They believed in the little guy fighting for something beautiful and good and true. And that's why their books are beautiful and powerful and stand today. And Christian faith is at the center of it. And I really think that that's, when I think about liberty, when I think about Christian faith is at the center.
Your book Revolution talks about the sacred cause. These folks signed up for a sacred cause that was greater than themselves. That's the power of the book Revolution.
Yeah.
Where do we get it right now? Where do we get it?
Well,
I want to make sure
you can go to Amazon. If you can find it in a Barnes & Noble, I would be surprised. Some Barnes & Noble carrying it, but basically right now the best place to get it is Amazon. You can read it tomorrow. I read the audio book in case somebody wants to do the audio book. That's my voice. But I'm very excited. It continues to sell well. Yesterday, I was preaching at a church in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, talking about this book. Next weekend, I'm going to be in Dallas. The weekend after that, I'm going to be in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. After that, I'll be in San Jose, California. I've been everywhere. And everywhere I go, people say, I saw you on War Room. So it's kind of funny. To everywhere I go, people are greeting me and saying, say hello to Steve. So hello from everywhere.
Thank you. It's great the War Posse's turn out. They love the book. They've made the book a New York Times bestseller, one of the biggest selling, hottest books of the summer. Before you go, how many total hits on Newsmax and Fox News, sir?
Fox News has not had me on. Newsmax has had me on 3 very brief hits, but that was just right in the beginning. I hope they'll have me on again.
They got to have you on again. It's great. Chris Ruddy knows England. He loves England. Should have you on from London, from Oxford. Great week. We're going to check back in on an update on the Inklings later in the week. Say hi to everybody. Socrates in the City in Oxford. The movable feast of Socrates in the City. Eric, great job. People love the book. The book is Revolution, the sacred cause that is handed down to you through every patriot's grave to the current time. Yes, you are the same as the revolutionary generation. Think about the responsibility you have. Short commercial break. We'll be back for some shocking numbers in a moment.
The only end is annihilation. Now, what if winning this war requires boots on the ground? I asked you that last time. That's not very popular with the American people. What is your response to that?
It's not popular with me either. Look, I'm not a parent of an Army person, a Marine person, so I'm very sensitive to that. Trust me. But look, we have the Army, we have the Marines for a reason. They're not there to shake your hand at the airport, Rachel, okay? They're there for a reason. Last I checked, we don't have a draft in this country. So these courageous men and women know exactly what they're signing up for. This is war. We don't want to see anybody die, but this is war. A war that started 47 years ago that they started. So, yes, I know that the moral ground is to say, I don't want our kids to die. I feel the same way. But we got to win. Now, we can win maybe without putting boots on the ground. Maybe we can. I don't know. I'm not Jack Keane. I don't have that type of information. If we can do that, great. But if at some point it requires putting some boots on the ground to win this war, that's why they signed up. To fight for this country, to fight for President Trump, and to rid the world of evil animals like the Iranian regime.
On economic consequences for every historic and significant decision a president makes. And I am confident that in the end, President Trump will be judged as one of our greatest presidents for numerous reasons, but especially this courageous undertaking. And it may take time, context, and perspective to understand how extraordinary the president's actions are and how heroic they are under the circumstances, since it seems that every element of our society, except for you, Mr. and Mrs. America, are objecting to him doing what he's doing, which must be done.
You, Mr. and Mrs. America, that have raised your kids upright so they want to defend this country, and Sid, was it Rosenberg right there saying they know what they signed up for, another war in the Middle East. Not so sure about that. Being one of the people that signed up, and of course my kid brother and daughter and many, many people in the family, but all served in the Middle East. Nick Cleveland-Stout from Quincy, you've got a report that I want to make sure we go through it in detail so people can see and read for themselves and look at your backup data so they come to their own conclusion. But it's pretty jaw-dropping. You basically assert from your research that since October 7th, the Hamas attack, terrorist attack, surprise attack on Israel, that since roughly that time, is it $1 billion or close to $1 billion has been spent by Israel for influencers and radio? And I'm not saying Sid or Mark Levin took that money. I just want to use that as an example of some of the over-the-top pitches you're hearing on Fox News right now. But that $1 billion has gone in an influence operation, very sophisticated, very systematic, not just onesies, twosies, but to basically change opinion or to influence opinion and then political action in the United States, sir?
Yeah, first of all, thanks so much for having me. But that's exactly right, that about $1 billion has been allocated for public diplomacy, Hasbara efforts abroad, not just in the U.S., but you can I tracked about 100 million of those dollars has been spent under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, which is, as your viewers are probably well aware, this law that requires contractors, lobbyists of foreign governments to disclose what they're doing on behalf of foreign governments. So, yeah, it's a lot of money, and it's being used for a lot of things, influencing chatbots, paying influencers, reaching out to evangelical Christians, all kinds of things that we can get into.
Now, this is separate. I just want to make sure this is separate from AIPAC and money they put in either for lobbying or for giving money to political campaigns or for lobbying efforts on Capitol Hill, correct? This is a totally, and the reason people are kind of shocked by it, that they've had that, Israel's done that for years, people that are affiliated and support Israel done that for years, but this is a totally different bucket, correct?
That's exactly right. This is a totally new strategy that was largely in response to, I think, them realizing that they needed to put their thumb on the scale in a more meaningful way, like after just the precipitous collapse of American public support for the U.S.-Israel relationship. Whereas before they could rely on those organizations that you're describing, like AIPAC, like Christians United for Israel, that are American-led, American-funded. Now they have to the Israeli government is actually having to hire a lot of people under FARA, which they didn't do before.
But walk me through, well, in FARA, because I think there's more attention to these FARA laws today, people are realizing you could be prosecuted for this. I think people for years did this without doing it, that you could be prosecuted for this. And so now they're much more. But isn't this in response to, in fairness, isn't this a response to all of a sudden they were kind of overwhelmed by TikTok and Instagram of all these other influencers, some of which money may have come from the Gulf Emirates? Because remember, the theory of the war room, we ain't got any friends over there. The Gulf Emirates that we're defending, and you got all these bases over there, and kids are dying at these bases, are the same guys funding radical Islam here in the United States. They're not our allies, and we can't keep kidding ourselves they're our allies. The Israelis, wasn't the fact they got caught by surprise, particularly on TikTok and Instagram, of this kind of flood, of particularly of the early days of the Gaza war, that all of a sudden you can see it, particularly among young people, they started to shift dramatically on their support for Israel, which traditionally the country's just kind of had I don't want to say knee-jerk, but it was just always Israel's our greatest ally, right? And all of a sudden they realized that with TikTok and Instagram, there was a very different message getting out there, and they were late to the party.
Yeah, to be clear, a lot of different countries engage in different kinds of foreign influence, and if you look at the top spenders, they're pretty much all Gulf countries. I've written about Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar. Those countries in particular are very invested in influencing elite opinion, American public opinion. I think that a lot of I will say, I think
hold on. I want to make sure. Hang on. I want to make sure I get this clear, because this is why you're such an important guy. You're covering it all. They're doing that so that we support them, but they're also trying to they're particularly with, you can see it in Texas and throughout the country, with this kind of what I call this Islamic invasion. The money's all coming from Turkey and Saudi Arabia and Qatar, particularly Qatar. But they're very active in the social media to influence American, not just opinion, but to turn it into political power, correct? Political power from the United States that supports them in the Gulf, correct?
All of these countries are very invested in winning over, exactly like you said, American public opinion, elite opinion. I mean, I think a lot of the response, though, to this precipitous collapse in American public support, I don't think you can just chalk up to foreign influence. Like a lot of it is very organic. Seeing the images coming out of Gaza, seeing churches being bombed. I know a lot of evangelical Christians have been very upset seeing what's coming out of Gaza. And then there are plenty of like America First, like very, genuine America First concerns over, the fact that Israel has played a role in getting the U.S. into this war with Iran. So, I think a lot of those countries have that you mentioned have been active in this space. I haven't seen that they've directly paid influencers. That seems relatively new. But these countries definitely sponsor delegations of influencers to come over. Qatar's done that. Saudi Arabia has done that. So they're all very, very active in trying to win over these, important stakeholders.
Do we have enough to make it visible? First off, I think it should be banned, but to make it visible, is the foreign, because you said right now from the Gulf Emirates, in your research, I don't think any of the influence, the money that's going to people, and there is money going to people, is not fully reported. Do we have laws in the book so that the American people can say, hey, if it's the Israelis or if it's Qatar, I can fully understand that they're feeding me stuff that they want me to react to and to support them? Is there enough regulation of this that the American people would be able to say, hey, because we don't want to limit what people see, but when you see it, that, hey, somebody's giving me their point of view because they want me to report to respond to what they want to have happen.
We do, in the Foreign Agents Registration Act, like if you register as a foreign agent, you're given a packet full of instructions about how to comply with the law. And if you look at that, like it says that if you post online, for instance, then you have to always disclose that you are a paid agent of a foreign government. It's called a conspicuous statement. And if you look, some foreign agents actually do abide by this. If you look at like Rod Blagojevich, for instance, he's a registered foreign agent for Republika Srpska, and he's very transparent. Like whenever he posts on Twitter, he always says, I'm doing this because I'm a paid foreign agent. And that's part of the problem is like, something that Marjorie Taylor Greene has pointed out is it's so difficult to know who is paid and who's not in the foreign influence space. The problem is it's not enforced, right? There are a lot of influencers who are being paid, but we just don't know who they are. The same way when you're scrolling your timeline and you see an ad for, a pair of Nike shoes, and it says, this is an ad.
But hang on. You're saying $100 million. Let's start with what we do know, and if that's being enforced, then we start with what we don't know and it's not being. The $100 million, in fact, I think, and I was kind of shocked at this because I know Brad pretty well, but Brad Parscale, who was our head of digital in the first Trump campaign, I think even the second Trump campaign, there was some perturbation. I think he's still running. He's an expert. Brad's one of the smartest guys in the world of this. That's why he's always been part of the Trump movement. Brad, he and his partner bought Salem Radio, and Salem Radio, and people should understand this. They bought Salem Radio. I don't think they paid anything for the equity. They bought the debt at a huge discount. Why was that? Mm-hmm. Because the hosts at Salem Radio were not generating a big enough audience to really get the ad revenues to pay for it. So Brad Parscale, did they take, was it $50 or $60 million directly from Israel, and Brad actually registered as a foreign agent?
Yeah, so he registered as a foreign agent of Israel in September of last year, and his contract has been upped many times by the Israeli government. So initially it was for $1.5 million a month, then it was $3 million a month. Now he's getting $4.5 million a month. And yeah, he's doing a number of things for the Israeli government. He's been the largest recipient of these funds that are trickling down to American contractors working for the Israeli government. So over the course of a year, he's set to get just shy of $50 million.
Okay, 50 minutes. So I'm gonna hold you through the break. But if I'm listening to Salem Radio, did they have a disclosure that says that they are funded by a foreign agent of the Israeli government? I mean, you talk about there's regulations that they have to post it. If you have AM radio, which is still kind of from the Rush Limbaugh school of getting the word out, very powerful, particularly in the MAGA movement, particularly in rural areas, or did they have disclosures now on all their disclosures, including Scott Jennings and all these guys, Hugh Hewitt, that they are financed and basically kept alive by a foreign agent of money coming directly from Israel, sir?
They do not. And to clarify, though, so Parscale has a firm called Clock Tower X, which is the LLC that this $50 million is coming through. And Parscale is doing a lot of things on behalf of the Israeli government. One of the things is that he's carrying out a mass texting campaign. He's texting, what appears to be millions and millions of Americans, asking them about their views on Israel, lightly pushing, pro-Israeli narratives. He's also creating a number of websites on behalf of the Israeli government that talk about, how great of an ally Israel is, why it's important for the U.S. to support Israel in the war in Iran, all these different things. So those are two of the main things that he's doing. But there is this other element of, in the initial contract, he said that part of his work would be to integrate pro-Israel messaging into Salem media. And
hang on one second. I want to fully develop this topic. Short commercial break. Nick Cleveland-Stout from the Quincy Institute on this amazing report that you've got to read. Short commercial break. Back in a moment.
We will fight till they're all gone. We rejoice when there's no more. Let's take down the CCP.
Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, Chapter, a data-driven company, I bet your Medicare, has saved the Warren Posse over $1 million. Right now, they still have the hotline, 845-WAR-ROOM. Can't get simpler than that. Pick the phone up, 845-WAR-ROOM. It's a free, no-obligation consultation where they talk to you about you talk to them about your current Medicare plan, and they do different perturbations, can talk to you about alternatives, all based on data. That's Chapter. We're getting rave reviews about this. 845-WAR-ROOM. Make sure you go check it out today. Also, Birch Gold, take your phone out. Text Bannon, Bannon, 989898. You get the ultimate guide for investing in gold and precious metals in the age of Trump. And here's what this is about. It talks to you about gold IRAs and whether you should roll over your 401k or your IRA into a gold IRA, or maybe the ownership of physical gold, tax deferred. Talk to Philip Patrick and team of all the details. Do I have the trailer? Not yet. Just tell me when. I'm going to talk to you about one of my favorite films. And you talk about this thing about being influencing and how controversial. So how much money has Salem actually gotten from this? I guess you're saying now up to $50 million that Parscale's taken as an agent of influence for Israel. And he signed government documents saying, hey, I'm doing it. I'm taking the money. So I want to make sure that I report accurately. He's doing influencer campaigns. Is he disclosing who he's giving the money to on the texting side, on the influencing side, on whatever they're doing on Twitter? Or is it just disclosing what he's doing at Salem?
Parscale has disclosed quite a bit about what he's doing. So the company that's carrying out the mass texting campaign is called Sparkfire Technologies. He's given them upwards of $5 million to carry out this campaign. I know a lot of people that have gotten these texts. They'll reach out. They'll say something like, "Hey,
do they disclose? Hang on. Do they disclose that they're agents of the Israeli government in the text?
They do not, and that's a very important point. They'll reach out initially. They'll say something.
Whoa! Isn't that a violation of federal law?
So it appears as though, so basically they, at some point in the conversation, they will send a link to one of these pro-Israel websites that are created by Parscale. And if you click that website and go to the very, very bottom, and then you see a statement that says this is a paid campaign from the Israeli government. I don't know about you, but I typically don't click links from random chatbots that reach out.
But whose responsibility? It's not a self-reporting thing. Whose responsibility when you're a foreign agent? Who is supposed to be checking that and going to Parscale and say, hey, look, at the bottom of the 5th page is not good enough. You need it in block letters up at the top. Just like if Qatar's doing it or the CCP's doing it, it should be in block letters right up there so the American people, you shouldn't block the content so the American people can't say you should see it. You can weigh and measure it. But you should know if it's coming from a government that's paying the guy to do it. This is not just a group of Americans saying, hey, look, we support Israel. Let's put on a play, right? No. So whose responsibility is to enforce this?
It's the Department of Justice. And I think it's a very important point, though, that this is like not just an Israel specific thing. This is like if anyone is carrying out this campaign, they need to disclose that they are funded on behalf of a foreign government, that they're carrying this out on behalf of a foreign government. So yeah, it's the Department of Justice's responsibility to ensure that different foreign agents are disclosing everything that they need to be. And, it appears to me as though Parscale in these texts is not meeting that threshold.
What would they do? They've taken $500,000 on Salem Radio. You said he's even disclosed that. Do they put up any disclaimer at all on their website? They put up any disclaimer during their shows that we are partially funded or we are taking money from a registered foreign agent of the Israeli government, sir?
I haven't seen anything along those lines. But Parscale is clearly in a position to be able to integrate these pro-Israel messaging into Salem Media properties. He's the chief strategy officer over there. And he said that he hasn't really done anything related to Salem Media. But in his initial filing, he made very clear that that was one of his top priorities. And one of his closest allies just played a large role in the buyout of Salem Media about a month and a half ago.
Yeah. No, they bought it out. He and his partner bought it out. Qatar, whether it's New York City, the public education, I can tell you down in Texas, between Pakistan, Saudis, Turks, but really Qatar, we're getting flooded with propaganda about Islam and about the benefits of Islam. Is anybody in the Justice Department, if they're not self-disclosing, at least Parscale disclosed, so he's in public thing, I'm an agent of the Israeli government. There are there's tons of cash coming in from the Gulf Emirates, as you know. Is anybody enforce that? And do we need somebody, the Justice Department, say, hey, look, you got to get on top of this. They got people in the United States acting as their agents and not disclosing it, sir.
Definitely. There needs to be far more disclosure. I think we've seen just a lack of enforcement in this Justice Department, unfortunately, when it comes to foreign influence. We have laws on the books, but unfortunately, it seems like.
But hang on, but Biden didn't do it any better. My point is, it's kind of the apparatus. The apparatus is just not interesting. We see this in the disclosures of Pulte. Anyway, we got to bounce. I'm gonna have you back on tomorrow. I got so many more questions, but I want everybody to read this report. And if Mo and Elizabeth and Grace can act as force multipliers, send it out to the posse. I need everybody to read it. Nick, you're going to be back on this tomorrow. Until that time, your social media, where they go to get your research, sir.
Yeah, the Quincy Institute, quincyinst.org. Plenty of good stuff there. You can read the entire report for yourself. The Eighth Front. You can also follow me on Twitter, Nick Cleveland-Stout. I think my username is Nick_ClevelandS.
The Eighth Front. In fact, tomorrow I will start off by asking Nick, what is the Eighth Front? Nick, thank you so much for coming on today. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
On our first show back without the great Sam Faddis. Unbelievable. Tomorrow, 5 to 7, Natalie and Jack are going to be co-hosting with me. We're going to do a special Sam Faddis for 2 hours, and we're going to tie it to current events because Sam would have been all over the show with both Zelensky and Netanyahu in town for meetings about Lindsey Graham's funeral, attending Lindsey Graham's funeral. Sam Faddis, I think, would have one or two observations about that, and we'll tie it all together. The Charlie Kirk Show is next. Andrew Covette in the team. Poso will be up, fully operational in his studio after his trip overseas at 2 o'clock. You got Steve Gruber's going to be in Michigan. President's leaving. In fact, we had it in the box. Leaving for Michigan. Gruber's going to be there live, and then bowling, and then back to the warm at 5 o'clock. We'll be here 5 to 7 tonight. Until then, you've been in the war room. See you back there at 5.